I'm on the job. I'm the first one in. I'm the last one out. I'm like an everyday American who loves his country, loves the sport of hockey, and champions my friends when they raise a gold medal and invite me in to celebrate. I've never been intoxicated on the job, and that is why we filed a $250 million defamation lawsuit. And any one of you that wants to participate, bring it on. I'll see you in court.
Explain the computer login issue. Just explain the computer login issue. You were not able to log into your lawsuit contends that you were not able to log into the system. What did you think after you were unable to log into the system?
Let's have a survey. How many of you people believe that's true? Hang on.
Did you communicate
You
with
asked the question. Let me answer it.
No, let me ask.
No.
Did you communicate with anyone that you thought you were fired after you were unable to log into
the problem with you?
Kash Patel sat at the witness table, microphone clipped to his lapel, looking every bit the man in control until Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett started speaking. The questions came fast, precise, and unrelenting. Within minutes, the FBI director was squirming, his prepared answers collapsing under the weight of documents and his own prior testimony. Then the judge's order landed like a hammer. This wasn't just another congressional hearing. This was the moment Kash Patel's carefully constructed defenses cracked wide open in public view. Crockett, known for her sharp cross-examinations, zeroed in on the contradictions that had been building for weeks. She held up court filings, compared them line by line with what Patel had sworn under oath just days earlier, and forced him to confront the record in real time. Director Patel, you told this committee there would be no political retribution at the FBI. You gave Senator Coons your word. Yet here we are, with more than a dozen agents and analysts removed from their positions, many of them directly connected to the classified documents investigation involving the former president. How do you square that? Crockett asked, her voice steady but cutting. Patel leaned forward.
And I truly don't know where to start. So I'm just going to make sure that we start off with a few facts. So a couple of facts that we need to make clear for everyone is that, number one, Director Christopher Wray, when he was appointed to be the head of the FBI, was appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining. Yet we are supposed to believe that you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I want to go through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people. And even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice.
Repeating his standard line. Every termination was based on performance and adherence to the oath, Congresswoman. No retribution. Crockett didn't blink. She slid a stack of internal memos across the table. These documents tell a different story. Whistleblowers say you personally signed off on the removal of agents who had been part of the Mar-a-Lago search team. One memo even references cleaning house on the Trump. Related matters? Your words or your team's? The room went quiet. Patel paused longer than he should have. Cameras caught the shift in his posture, the slight tightening of his jaw. He pivoted to claims about national security and legal constraints, but Crockett was already 3 steps ahead. She played a clip from his recent court appearance, where he had insisted under oath that certain Epstein-related files were blocked by sealed orders. The judge in that separate proceeding had already rejected that claim, calling Patel's representations inconsistent with the record. Crockett read the judge's words aloud. Director Patel, a federal judge, looked at the exact same court orders you described and said they don't exist. No blanket prohibitions. No sealed barriers preventing release. So either the judge is wrong or you misled the court. Which is it? Patel tried to reframe. He talked about ongoing investigations, interagency coordination, the need for caution. Crockett cut him off. You assured this body there would be no politicization. You assured us FBI employees would be protected. Yet agents who dared investigate the former president's handling of classified material are now gone. And you're blocking the release of files the public has a right to see. This isn't caution, Director. This looks like a cover-up. The hearing stretched on for hours, but that exchange became the defining moment. Social media exploded with clips. Legal analysts called it one of the most effective takedowns of a Trump appointee in recent memory. Patel's team tried damage control afterward, issuing statements about partisan attacks and Democrat lawfare, but the damage was done. What made Crockett's questioning so devastating wasn't just the facts she presented. It was the way she forced Patel to defend the indefensible on live television. Every time he fell back on his confirmation hearing promises, she countered with fresh evidence. Every time he claimed ignorance of the firing
To the president, they have allowed the president to morph federal agencies into instruments of autocracy. And as a result, the president has been able to ignore federal law, disregard court orders, and implement the largest pay-for-play scheme in American history. The White House, well, what's left of it anyway, is literally up for sale. The federal courts have characterized this presidency as, quote, lawless. In fact, when ruling against illegal acts committed by the administration, a Republican-appointed federal judge stated, quote, the court cannot imagine how the public interest might be served by permitting federal officials to flaunt the very laws they have sworn to enforce. In a separate case where the administration was sued for unlawful acts, the judge, also a Republican appointee, stated, quote, allowing constitutional rights to be dependent upon the grace of the executive branch would be a dereliction of duty by this third and independent branch of government and would be against the public interest. But in another case, the court summed it up perfectly by declaring, quote, as is becoming far too common, we are confronted again with the efforts of the executive branch to set aside the rule of law in pursuit of its own goals. Judiciary Committee Republicans have been completely complicit in this corruption. But since they're so interested in restoring law and order, I have a couple of suggestions on where they can start. Number one, this is the President of the United States standing beside his best friend, Jeffrey Epstein. As we all know, Mr. Epstein is one of the most notorious sexual predators in American history. For 8 weeks, the Republicans on this committee have chosen to protect these two men instead of providing justice to Mr. Epstein's victims. Now the administration is panicking. First, they campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. Then AG Bondi and associates did a photo op with the files, and she said, and I quote, "The Epstein list is on my desk." Then somehow the Epstein list didn't exist. Then the Epstein files became a Democratic hoax. Now the president is supposedly supportive of releasing the files, even though he's currently ignoring a congressional subpoena to do so. Now the president is simply crashing out. And it's because he can't seem to explain his special decades-long relationship with one of the most prominent sexual predators in American history. It's already public that he's in the Epstein files, but his administration is hiding the context of his involvement, if any, with Mr. Epstein's horrific crimes. Now, this is Miss Ghislaine Maxwell. Miss Maxwell, who obviously helped Jeffrey Epstein traffic more than 1,000 women and girls, well, Donald Trump is now giving her special treatment while she's serving out her prison sentence. He won't even rule out giving her a pardon or commuting her sentence. I don't need to explain why pardoning sex traffickers wouldn't be restoring law and order. Now, this is Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. Not only has Secretary Noem been busy filming propaganda ads, she's also been busy cashing in on millions of taxpayer dollars. In fact, Secretary Noem has funneled millions of dollars to a company called the Strategy Group. The Strategy Group helped Secretary Noem win her campaign to become the governor of South Dakota. Corey Lewandowski, her top policy advisor, has worked with the firm. And the company's CEO is married to Secretary Noem's chief spokesperson, Mrs. Tricia McLaughlin. This is what corruption looks like. There's still...
She produced timelines showing his direct involvement. The performance gap was glaring. This confrontation didn't happen in isolation. It connects directly to the broader turmoil inside the FBI under Patel's leadership. Multiple sources with knowledge of the situation say at least 10 agents tied to the classified documents case were removed in coordinated actions over the past 2 weeks. Some received termination notices citing vague conduct issues. Others were placed on administrative leave with little explanation. One veteran FBI analyst, speaking on condition of anonymity because of fear of further retaliation, described the atmosphere inside headquarters as toxic and paranoid. Agents who once worked sensitive national security matters now worry that any file touching Trump world could end their careers. Morale has plummeted. Experienced personnel are quietly looking for exits. The court order that followed the hearing only deepened Patel's problems. The federal judge presiding over the Epstein files litigation issued a detailed ruling that explicitly rejected Patel's claims about legal barriers. The order gave the FBI a tight deadline to produce the documents, warning that continued non-compliance could result in contempt findings and personal liability for the director. Legal experts reviewing the order say it leaves Patel with almost no room to maneuver. This isn't a suggestion, one former federal prosecutor noted. This is a court telling the head of the FBI that his representations were not accurate and that he must comply or face consequences. Patel's humiliation comes at a particularly dangerous time for the administration. With midterms approaching and public frustration growing over economic pressures and ongoing controversies, the last thing Trump needs is his hand-picked FBI director becoming a daily punchline and a legal liability. The Crockett exchange also revived questions about Patel's past. This is the same man who once worked closely with Trump's legal team during the first term. He has long been viewed by critics as a loyalist first and a law enforcement professional second. His elevation to FBI director was celebrated by the base as a way to clean out the deep state. Now it looks like the cleanup operation may have been aimed at protecting the president rather than serving the public. Congressional Democrats are already talking about next steps. Impeachment proceedings have been mentioned. Subpoenas for additional records are being prepared. Even some moderate voices in the party see Patel's situation.
Pulling money from the American people's pockets and depositing it into their bank accounts. Now we move on to yet somebody else. This is the so-called border czar, Tom Homan. Mr. Homan is on tape accepting $50,000 in cash bribes stuffed in a brown paper bag from an undercover FBI agent. Apparently, Mr. Homan accepted these bribes in exchange for awarding federal contracts to his friends. Trump's Department of Justice killed the investigation into Mr. Homan's crimes, and congressional Republicans didn't say a mumbling word. Lastly, this is insurrectionist and Nazi sympathizer Ed Martin. It appears that Mr. Martin is functioning as the Associate Deputy Attorney General, Pardon Attorney, Director of the Fake Weaponization Working Group, and Special Attorney for Mortgage Fraud. All that means is that Mr. Martin is Trump's lapdog, whom the president sends to initiate lawsuits against the president's perceived political opponents. This is what we call organized crime. They're breaking the law, often by stealing taxpayer dollars, covering up their crimes by ending and obstructing investigations, then prosecuting people who call out their unlawful behavior. And while the Republicans are encouraging this corruption, they're abandoning actual victims of violent crime and ignoring the Republican-led state's 21st century murder crisis. In September's appropriation markup, congressional Republicans proposed reducing the FBI staff by thousands of positions and underfunding the agency by more than $1 billion. They've proposed slashing resources from the ATF. They've proposed cutting grants for juvenile justice programs and hate crimes and eliminating the community violence intervention and prevention grants. They're literally defunding the police. So no matter what they say at today's hearing, congressional Republicans have proven that they are not investing in keeping American communities safe from violent crime. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. If we've learned anything this year is that congressional Republicans are more interested in serving Donald Trump than they are in serving their constituents. Over the past 10 months, they have given away permanent tax cuts to the wealthiest people on earth, demolished half of the White House, pardoned violent insurrectionists, significantly driven up cost of living across the country, and then given themselves a taxpayer-funded 8-week vacation, all so that they could delay as long as possible Congress voting to release the Epstein files. And now they're trying to gaslight you into believing that you should trust them on crime policy. They want you to believe that living in a police state is a good or normal thing. They want you to be okay with having armed soldiers and federal agents monitor you as you shop for groceries or take your children to school. They want you to think that you won't be affected, but we've already seen Americans detained, arrested, injured, and some nearly killed because of this administration's reckless approach to handling crime. And they're doing all of this without acknowledging the fact that Republican-led states are experiencing a murder and crime and violent crime crisis, and they have for the last 2 decades. The Republicans' murder state rates were 33% higher than Democratic state murder rates in both 21 and 2022. In fact, over the past 22 years, the Republican state murder rates were nearly a quarter higher compared to states that are led by Democrats. Even when you remove Democratic cities and counties from the Republican states' data, their murder rate is still nearly a quarter higher than states run by Democrats. Ms. Levine, how long have you studied crime?
You're going to have me show my age. Is that nice?
It doesn't show on your face, honey. That's all that matters.
Let's just say about 3.
As an opportunity to draw a bright line around the independence of the FBI. Republican responses have been predictably defensive. Party leadership called the hearing a circus and accused Crockett of grandstanding. But behind closed doors, there is quiet concern. Several GOP senators who supported Patel's confirmation have begun distancing themselves, worried that the director's troubles could drag the entire party into deeper scandal. What happens next could determine whether the FBI retains any semblance of credibility as an independent institution. If Patel defies the court order, the administration risks a full-blown constitutional showdown over executive power and judicial authority. If he complies and releases the files, years of sensitive material could spill into public view at the worst possible moment. The personal toll on Patel is already visible. Insiders describe a man who entered the job with swagger, now operating under constant stress. His public appearances have grown more defensive. Allies who once praised his toughness are starting to wonder if he can survive the combined pressure of congressional scrutiny and judicial deadlines. This moment also highlights the power of targeted questioning in an era of short attention spans. Crockett's viral moments have done more to inform the public about potential abuses at the FBI than months of dry reports. Her ability to cut through spin and force concrete answers has made her a standout figure in these oversight battles. For the broader public, the stakes are clear. When the head of the nation's premier law enforcement agency appears to contradict himself under oath and faces judicial rebuke, trust in the system erodes. Voters already skeptical of institutions see confirmation of their worst fears. Those who believe in norms and accountability see a dangerous precedent taking root. The coming weeks will be decisive. Will Patel produce the documents? Will more agents speak out? Will Congress escalate to formal proceedings? Every development will be watched closely, not just in Washington, but across the country, as Americans try to make sense of what kind of government they have in this second Trump term. The Crockett hearing didn't just humiliate Kash Patel, it exposed the fragility of the administration's control over its own narrative. When a single congresswoman with a sharp mind and unflinching delivery can force the FBI director into visible discomfort and set the stage for a court order that binds his hands, the illusion of unchecked power begins to fade. Crockett didn't waste time with pleasantries. She went straight for the...
Been a recurring source of concern across the government. Early in his tenure, meetings and briefings had to be rescheduled for later in the day as a result of his alcohol-fueled nights. 6 current and former officials and others familiar with Patel's schedule told The Atlantic. As a sidebar, not normal. I've worked in 2 administrations. Again, back to the quote. On multiple occasions in the past year, members of his security detail had difficulty waking Patel because he was seemingly intoxicated. This was Chris was just referencing. And that's according to information supplied to Justice Department and White House officials. A request for breaching equipment, normally used by SWAT and hostage rescue teams to quickly gain entry into buildings, was made last year because Patel had been unreachable behind locked doors, according to multiple people familiar with the request. Multiple officials also tell The Atlantic that Patel is deeply concerned that his job is in jeopardy. Well, that's understandable. In one incident earlier this month, Patel struggled to log into an internal computer system. He quickly became convinced that he had been locked out, and he panicked, frantically calling aides and allies to announce that he had been fired by the White House, according to 9 people familiar with his outreach. 9 people. Now, the access problem turned out to, quote, have been a technical error, and it was quickly resolved, and that's according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Now, I should note MS Now has not independently verified any of this reporting. We've reached out to the FBI for comment, and if we get a response over the next hour, I will surely let you know as soon as we get a response. But I should note the FBI responded to The Atlantic with a graceful and eloquent statement attributed to Patel, and here's what he said. Print it, all false. I'll see you in court. Bring your checkbook. Graceful, eloquent. Okay. Joining me now is the reporter who broke that story, staff writer for The Atlantic, Sarah Fitzpatrick. First of all, Sarah, I'm so grateful you could be here because we saw this story and we reached out and we were like, can you come talk to us about it? And here you are. I want to talk to you about all the details of this bombshell report. I just skimmed the story, the surface there, I should say. But first, I just want to give you an opportunity to respond to this reaction to your piece, because Patel's advisor, Erica Knight, called your piece fabricated stories. She said that every serious D.C. reporter passed on. Sarah Fitzpatrick and Jeffrey Goldberg printed it anyway. Lawsuit is being filed. What do you say to that?
I say that I am a very careful, very diligent, award-winning investigative reporter with a history of award-winning work across multiple organizations. You and I, in fact, have worked together previously. I stand by every word of this reporting. We have excellent attorneys, and it is a surprising statement, but a very telling statement, I believe. And I would also note, we reached out for comment to the White House and to the Justice Department, neither of which disputed anything. We gave multiple opportunities, including 19 detailed questions. So we stand by every word. And look, this is telling, because there are so many people. You alluded to it earlier. These are not the types of people who are willing to speak out outside of the FBI, especially right now, because Kash Patel is going after people with polygraphs in a way that has never happened at the Bureau. So for it to be this level of alarm, this is people genuinely concerned that America is in danger as a result of this conduct. And I feel, a real responsibility to take care of that reporting incredibly carefully. And The Atlantic is nothing but diligent, and we have amazing lawyers and amazing editors, and I stand by every word.
I'm not surprised in any way by their response. I will say, and you, as you said, you note, and I noted, 9 sources for the opening anecdote of the story as well. Let's get into some of the details about
the heart of Patel's confirmation promises. Director Patel, you sat before this committee and swore there would be no political retribution at the FBI. You told Senator Coons your leadership would protect career agents from any hint of payback. Yet in the weeks since your confirmation, we have seen a wave of firings targeting precisely the people who worked on the classified documents investigation involving Donald Trump. Walk us through that. Patel cleared his throat and repeated his rehearsed line. Congresswoman, every personnel action was based on merit, performance standards, and upholding the constitutional oath. No retribution whatsoever. Crockett smiled thinly and held up a thick binder. Merit? Let's talk about the merit. Internal FBI records obtained by this committee show that at least 12 agents and analysts with direct ties to the Mar-a-Lago search and the classified documents case received termination notices in a compressed time frame. One memo, dated shortly after you assumed office, references realigning priorities away from past politicized investigations. Your signature appears on several of these actions. How exactly is that not retribution? The room tensed. Reporters scribbled furiously. Patel paused longer than comfortable, his fingers tapping the table. He tried to pivot to broad national security concerns, claiming the moves were necessary to restore trust inside the Bureau. Crockett was ready. Restore trust? Director, you also testified under oath in federal court that certain Epstein-related files could not be released because of sealed court orders and broad legal prohibitions. A federal judge has now reviewed those exact claims and issued a scathing order calling your representations inconsistent with the actual record. No such blanket orders exist. The judge gave you a hard deadline to comply or face contempt proceedings. Care to explain that contradiction to this committee? Patel's face tightened. He began citing ongoing litigation and the need for caution with sensitive materials. Crockett cut him off again. Caution or cover-up? Because these are the same files that multiple whistleblowers say contain information directly relevant to public understanding of influence networks that reached into the highest levels of government. You blocked them. You fired the people investigating related matters. And now a judge has called you out in writing. This isn't caution, Director Patel. This looks like a systematic effort to protect one man at the expense of the Bureau's integrity. The exchange went on for nearly 40 minutes. Crockett methodically laid out timeline after timeline. She displayed emails, termination letters, and court filings side by side.
That's because Patel's excessive drinking seems to be what is alarming a lot of the sources in here. There are multiple anecdotes that refer to that. That's understandable. They're moving meetings. People couldn't wake him. What more have you heard about the extent of his drinking habits and how it seems to be affecting his ability to serve as FBI director?
I think the key point is that this is happening in places in which it is public. There are lots and lots of people around who are seeing it, who are hearing about it, who are learning about it. For example, we have video of Patel chugging a beer to excess on video.
We've all seen it. Everybody's seen it. Yes.
And I think it speaks to, he was on official travel at that time. There were ongoing threats in the United States at that time. So, it is a very, very clear pattern that has occurred in multiple locations over a long period of time. And it's that pattern which is giving everyone pause. These are not one-off events.
I just read this story, but we have to come back to it because the excerpt I just read, just to remind people, a request for breaching equipment normally used by SWAT and hostage rescue teams to quickly gain entry into buildings was made last year because Patel had been unreachable behind locked doors, according to multiple people familiar with this request. I find that, I've traveled with 2 presidents. I've worked in the government. I've worked in the State Department. Shocking, really. People should feel shocked by that. This is not a 22-year-old who's irresponsible, who's on a trip and should be behaving better. This is the FBI director. Can you tell us more just about that scene or paint it for people who have not yet read your story?
I think the really most important thing here is that most national security officials at this caliber, or even several layers below, those types of people sleep with their phones on their chest. They are so concerned because they need to be reachable immediately because there are life or death decisions that have to be made quickly. There may be threats in which they need to be moved quickly. And so this timing aspect, the ability to reach that person quickly and make sure that they are responsive, I think this is a request that was not made lightly. And I think that's the fact that it was made and that it was well known, I think because of that level of concern, really tells you about, the kind of larger picture here. And look, you have the FBI is, you and I both know so many people that have given their lives to this organization. This is a place protecting.
Are still giving their lives, to be clear, still in there.
Yes, and the threats have never been higher. The risks have never been higher. And so you have a group of people that have totally, the biggest fear would be that something could happen to this person. And I think they take that responsibility incredibly seriously. But that goes beyond the entire organization. You have an organization that is dependent on this person being available, being cogent, and being able to quickly respond to multiple things all at the same time.
The opening anecdote of the story was incredibly striking for a number of reasons. I mean, because you described this freak out in which Patel was intoxicated. He thinks he was locked out of an FBI.
No, to be clear, he wasn't.
He was not in that case.
Not
Thank you for
intoxicated.
correcting. It
No.
just broke some. I'm trying to remember all the details of it. Thank you for correcting me there. But he thought he was locked out of an FBI computer system. He grew incredibly paranoid. Thought he was going to be fired. It turned out to be a technical issue. Talk about that level of paranoia, what that tells you, why it was important to kind of lead with that anecdote in the story.
The anecdote was just incredibly telling for a couple of reasons. One is that it set off such a panic within the FBI and within Washington. It set off a panic in Congress. The White House was fielding calls. I mean, there was a real...
On large screens for the entire committee and viewing audience to see. Each new document seemed to land heavier than the last. Patel's responses grew shorter, more defensive, occasionally contradictory. At one point, Crockett asked about a specific senior analyst who had been removed. This agent led a key aspect of the document's review. His performance reviews were exemplary until your arrival. Suddenly, he's out for failure to adapt to new priorities. Was that priority protecting the former president from accountability? Patel denied any connection. Crockett produced the analyst's prior evaluations and contrasted them with the terse termination memo. The difference was stark. The hearing room murmured. Even some Republican members looked uncomfortable. This humiliation did not occur in a vacuum. It sits atop months of growing scrutiny over Patel's leadership. From the moment he was sworn in, critics warned that his history as a Trump loyalist made him unsuitable for the top law enforcement job. Those warnings now appear prophetic. Multiple sources inside the FBI describe a climate of fear where agents avoid any case that could be perceived as touching Trump-related matters. One veteran field supervisor, speaking on background, said agents are walking on eggshells. You don't know if today's legitimate investigation becomes tomorrow's reason for termination. The message is clear: stay away from certain people and certain files. The shocking court order added rocket fuel to the fire. Issued late yesterday by the federal judge overseeing the Epstein files litigation, it explicitly rejected Patel's sworn statements about legal barriers. The judge wrote that after careful review of the dockets, no such prohibiting orders exist as represented by Director Patel. The order mandates full production of the requested materials within 72 hours and warns of potential personal contempt findings, fines, and referral for further investigation if compliance fails. Legal scholars called the language unusually strong. One former U.S. attorney said, "Judges rarely speak this directly to a sitting FBI director." This is a warning shot across the bow that the court will not tolerate misleading testimony. Patel's team scrambled after the order dropped. Statements were issued claiming miscommunication and promising review. But the damage to his credibility was already done. Social media clips of Crockett's questioning racked up millions of views within hours. Hashtags like Patel perjury and FBI under siege trended heavily. The broader context makes this moment even more damaging. The Trump administration has pushed hard to reshape federal law enforcement in its image. Patel was supposed to be the instrument of that reshaping. Instead, he finds himself fighting on multiple...
Look at this. If people want to continue the baseless, fraudulent, false personal attacks at me, that's great. Keep the target on me, as I've always said, but the mission has never been better.
Senator Murray.
Thank you very much.
Manners. Thank you for joining us, Vice Chairwoman.
No worries.
And I appreciate your presence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I want to start by recognizing important work by the FBI to crack down on fraud. In one case, the FBI helped bring justice multiple former business owners who orchestrated a $205 million Medicare fraud scheme on the American people. And those business owners filed nearly 1 million false claims for services that they never provided to any patients, literally stealing from American taxpayers and preying on vulnerable people who were suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia and substance abuse. But thanks to the FBI, those crooks were held accountable. So I just wanted to ask you today if you would pass along my gratitude to those FBI agents for their tireless work bringing those criminals to justice.
I will, ma'am. The fraud work is often overlooked, and I greatly appreciate that.
And very important. But I do have to say, unfortunately, President Trump, the guy who says he's going after fraud, granted this man, Lawrence Duran, clemency last June. He was set free and let off the hook for the $87 million he owed in restitution. And Trump granted clemency to Duran's business partner last February, cutting well short her 35-year prison term. He literally undid the important justice work the FBI served and let fraudsters off the hook, and I find that deeply disturbing. With that, I want to say, I want to take a moment to reiterate the important role of DOJ law enforcement in keeping all of us safe. Those agents and deputy marshals are absolutely critical to making sure public safety and solving crime. But I worry that instead of pursuing these child abusers or terrorists or drug traffickers or other criminals, you have our agents spending time carrying out Stephen Miller's mass deportation agenda and harassing families and children. I want to ask you, Director Patel, how many FBI agents have been reassigned to work on immigration enforcement?
No one at the FBI has been reassigned to work solely on immigration, ma'am.
Well, I would differ with you because according to the Cato Institute, more than 2,000 FBI agents were reassigned to work on immigration enforcement in 2025. By the way, it's not just the FBI. More than 2,000 agents from the DEA, more than 600 from the Marshal Service, and more than 1,000 ATF agents are spending their time on immigration enforcement. That has really pulled critical, highly trained assets off of work to keep our communities safe from drugs and guns and other threats, and I find that deeply disturbing. Now, Director Patel, I want to ask you about a number of extremely troubling stories recently about your leadership and temperament and what's happened to the FBI with you at the top. And in response to all the concerns about your leadership, instead of righting the ship, you've taken to polygraphing your employees to scare them and attempt to rat out leakers. There are reports that you're using FBI resources to investigate journalists for reporting what's going on, and that is absolutely not what this committee intended when we funded the Bureau. So can you commit to this committee today that no agent hours have been pulled from other work like counterterrorism or violent crime investigations to work on matters related to negative press about you or your personal lawsuit?
Senator, I greatly appreciate that.
Multiple fronts: congressional oversight, judicial rebuke, internal morale collapse, and public skepticism. Democrats on the committee wasted no time connecting the dots. One senator stated after the hearing, "We are witnessing the weaponization of the FBI not against criminals, but against accountability itself." Director Patel's contradictions are not minor slips. They suggest a pattern of placing loyalty above law. Republican defenders pushed back, calling the hearing a partisan spectacle designed to distract from border issues and economic challenges. Yet, even within GOP circles, there is quiet acknowledgement that Patel has become a liability. Several senior officials have begun distancing themselves, worried the fallout could contaminate the entire administration heading into midterm season. This confrontation also highlights Jasmine Crockett's rising profile as one of the most effective questioners in Congress. Her style, direct, evidence-based, and unflinching, has made her a standout in high-stakes hearings. In this case, she didn't just score points. She forced the country to confront uncomfortable questions about whether the FBI remains an independent guardian of justice or has become an extension of political protection. For Kash Patel personally, the humiliation carries deep professional consequences. His reputation as a tough, no-nonsense leader has taken a severe hit. Allies who championed his nomination now face tough questions about their judgment. The court order puts real legal risk on the table. Contempt of court for a sitting FBI director is uncharted and dangerous territory. Insiders say Patel has been working long hours trying to manage the fallout, but the pressure is showing. Public appearances have grown more combative. Private meetings reportedly include heated discussions about damage control strategies, ranging from partial document releases to aggressive counter-messaging. The American people are watching closely. Trust in federal institutions was already strained. Scenes of the FBI director appearing evasive and contradicted by his own records only deepen that cynicism. Polling in key battleground districts shows independents particularly troubled by the optics of politicization at the Bureau. Looking ahead, the next 72 hours are critical. If Patel complies with the court order, sensitive materials could enter the public domain at the worst possible time for the administration. If he resists, the judge has signaled readiness to escalate. Either choice brings pain. Congressional Democrats are preparing follow-up hearings and potential subpoenas for additional witnesses. Whistleblowers are said to be coming forward.
The question, and I can tell you unequivocally, this FBI is targeting and investigating no journalists. This FBI is targeting no journalists. The Obama and Biden administrations targeted dozens of journalists, sent out 1,200 interviews.
I didn't ask you about the
And-
Biden administration. I asked
Well-
if you can commit to this committee that no agent hours have been pulled from other work.
We have not done so.
Okay, well, there are reports that are using FBI resource to investigate journalists. You are saying to this committee today that that is not true.
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, well, let me just say, Director Patel, we need a serious budget, but we also need serious leadership. And I will say this, there's one clear priority in Trump's overall budget, and it isn't law and order, it is war. Because while Trump is proposing cuts to programs that really do keep people safe, he wants to increase war spending by $500 billion. And I don't need to tell anyone here we are not going to bomb our way to safer communities. So I intend to help rip that budget up and write bills that keep families safe. But beyond that budget, we need serious leadership at the FBI that the American people can trust. And I am deeply concerned about the reports that your leadership has not been serious. We need somebody at this agency who's focused on solving criminal cases, not passing out branded bourbon or jetting around the globe. Your job is to be reachable. And I know Senator Van Hollen asked you about this, but I gotta say, if you want to pass out liquor or pop bottles in a locker room, stick to podcasting, leave law and order to people who really do care about justice and appearances. That is really critical. And it's what I am really deeply concerned about, and so are many people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I respond? This is what real leadership looks like at the FBI. Every one of you was given it. This is what's happened under my tenure at the FBI and the Trump administration. 20-point drop in the homicide rate, 45,000 violent offenders arrested last year, twice as many as 2024, 2,450 criminal gangs disrupted, that's a 322% increase from 2024, 6,900 child victims have been located since I've been in the seat, that's a 144% increase, 2,900 child predators and human traffickers arrested, that's a 70% increase, and we've arrested 8 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world in 14 months, that's twice as many in the 4 years combined. That is what the men and women of the FBI are doing, well-resourced. Everyone should take a look at this. If people want to continue the baseless, fraudulent, false personal attacks at me, that's great. Keep the target on me, as I've always said, but the mission has never been better.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond in the
Senator
last
Murray.
With more documentation. The story is accelerating, not slowing down. This episode reveals something fundamental about the current moment in American governance. When loyalty is prioritized over competence and independence, institutions suffer. When directors of critical agencies find themselves humiliated in public hearings and cornered by court orders, the system's guardrails are being tested. Kash Patel entered the job promising a new era at the FBI. What has emerged instead is a pattern of controversy, contradiction, and institutional damage. Jasmine Crockett's brutal questioning laid it bare for all to see. The judge's shocking order made it official. The consequences will unfold in the days and weeks ahead. More firings, more blocked documents, more hearings. Each development will be scrutinized. Each new revelation will add to the growing sense that something is deeply wrong at the top of the Bureau. For the Trump administration, this represents a serious distraction and vulnerability. For the FBI, it represents a crisis of confidence that will take years to repair if it can be repaired at all. For Kash Patel, it represents the most humiliating and dangerous chapter of his public career so far. The cameras caught every moment. The documents don't lie. The judge's words are now part of the permanent record. There is no spinning away from what happened in that hearing room. This is the new reality Patel and his team must navigate. Loyalty brought him to the pinnacle. Whether it can sustain him through this firestorm remains to be seen. The clock is ticking. The court order stands. Congress is watching. The public is paying attention. And Jasmine Crockett showed exactly how effective, relentless, fact-based oversight can be. The full impact is still unfolding, but one thing is certain. Kash Patel left that hearing far more exposed than when he entered. The humiliation was real. The court order was binding. The questions will not go away. America is watching what happens next. The stakes for the rule of law could not be higher. Patel's defenders continue to argue that the entire process is a witch hunt designed to undermine the president's agenda. They point to past controversies involving the FBI and claim this is simply payback. But the documents, the timelines, and the judge's own words make that defense increasingly difficult to maintain. Inside FBI headquarters, the mood is somber. Career professionals who have dedicated their lives to the agency feel caught in the middle. Many worry that the institution's reputation is being sacrificed for short-term political protection. Legal experts following the case predict further court action if compliance is not swift. Some suggest the situation could even reach the Supreme Court if the administration chooses to fight the order on separation of powers grounds. That would drag the judiciary into yet another high-stakes confrontation with.
When he was appointed to be the head of the FBI, was appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that
That's
you are
false.
the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I want to go
false.
through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people, and even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody, and then you want to go and say, let me take a victory lap. Because honestly, if it wasn't for parents deciding...
The executive branch. Meanwhile, Democratic strategists are already incorporating clips from the Crockett hearing into midterm messaging. The visuals of Patel struggling to answer basic questions about firings and document releases are powerful. They reinforce narratives about chaos and retribution inside the administration. Republican operatives are urging the White House to consider damage control options, including possible reassignment for Patel or a public statement reaffirming commitment to FBI independence. Whether those recommendations are heeded remains unclear. The human element cannot be ignored. Agents who received termination notices describe shock and betrayal. Families disrupted. Careers upended. Some are consulting attorneys about wrongful termination claims. The potential for lawsuits adds another layer of legal exposure for the director and the agency. Crockett herself addressed reporters after the hearing. This is not about one man. This is about whether the FBI will serve the American people or serve as a shield for the powerful. Today's testimony raised more questions than answers. We will continue to demand those answers. Her words resonated. The public wants accountability. They want to know that the nation's top law enforcement agency is not being run as a personal protection service. Kash Patel's day of reckoning in front of Congress has become a defining moment. The brutal questions exposed weaknesses. The court order imposed deadlines. The combination has left him humiliated and on the defensive. The coming days will determine whether he can stabilize the situation or whether the pressure will continue to mount until something breaks. The FBI's future, the administration's credibility, and public trust in justice all hang in the balance. This story is developing rapidly. New information continues to emerge. But the core facts from that hearing room stand: contradictions, firings, blocked documents, and a federal judge unwilling to accept misleading testimony. Kash Patel has been placed in an extremely difficult position. How he responds will shape not only his own legacy, but the trajectory of the bureau he leads. The American people deserve better than evasion and contradiction at the highest levels of law enforcement. They deserve transparency and integrity. Today's events showed how far current leadership has strayed from those ideals. The humiliation was public. The court order was clear. The questions remain unanswered. And the consequences are only beginning. This is the reality the Trump team now faces. Loyal appointees can deliver loyalty, but they cannot always deliver competence under pressure. They can fire investigators, but they cannot fire the truth when it surfaces in open hearings and judicial rulings. The clock is ticking on Patel. The court order is clear. Congressional scrutiny is intensifying. Public skepticism is growing. The question is no longer whether Kash Patel can reshape the FBI in Trump's image. The question is whether he can survive long enough to try. Every answer he gave, every deflection, every moment of hesitation in that hearing is now part of the permanent record. Jasmine Crockett made sure of it. The judge reinforced it, and the American people are watching what happens next. The administration's response in the coming days will reveal whether they plan to fight the court order, double down on the firings, or attempt some damage control reshuffling. None of those options look clean. Each carries serious risk. For Kash Patel personally, the humiliation in that hearing room may be only the beginning. Legal exposure, congressional pressure, internal FBI resentment, and a damaged public image all compound. The man who promised to depoliticize the Bureau now finds himself at the center of its most political firestorm in years. This story is far from over, but today's events mark a significant turning point. The mask slipped, the contradictions were laid bare, and a federal judge has drawn a line that Kash Patel must now cross or pay the price for ignoring. The implications stretch into the midterms and beyond. If voters see an FBI weaponized for personal protection rather than public safety, the backlash could be severe. Democratic candidates are already preparing ads highlighting the Patel hearings. Independent analysts say trust in federal law enforcement is reaching new lows. Inside the Bureau, agents wait to see if their director will comply with the court or continue the pattern of resistance. Some are preparing documentation of their own, ready to come forward if retaliation continues. The Crockett questioning has become a rallying point for oversight advocates. It demonstrated that even powerful appointees can be held to account when evidence is presented clearly and relentlessly. Kash Patel's day in that hearing room will be replayed countless times. The sweat on his brow, the long pauses, the failed pivots. It was a public unraveling that few inside the administration saw coming, at least not in such dramatic fashion. This is what accountability looks like when it actually lands. Not just tweets or statements, but live testimony, hard evidence, and a court order that refuses to be ignored. The administration wanted a loyal FBI. They may have gotten more scrutiny and legal trouble than they bargained for. Patel's humiliation is their problem now, and the fallout is only beginning. The documents will either be released or the defiance will escalate. Either path brings risk. The court has spoken. Congress has put the questions on record. The public is paying attention. Kash Patel's position has never been more precarious. The man who once moved with confidence through Trump world now faces the harsh light of real oversight and judicial power. The brutal questions from Jasmine Crockett and the shocking court order that followed have changed the game. This is the new terrain. Loyalty alone is not enough when the record contradicts you in open session. Performance under pressure matters. Truthfulness under oath matters. And the consequences for failing those tests are becoming impossible to escape. The next hearing, the next filing, the next whistleblower statement could accelerate everything. For now, Kash Patel is on the defensive, humiliated in full public view, and bound by a court order that will test the limits of his authority and the administration's tolerance for embarrassment.